News!
Okay, we'll start with this. The moment of truth is almost here for Katie Taylor, for Chantel Cameron. It's fight week! Katie Taylor's long-awaited, long-anticipated homecoming. What was supposed to be an Amanda Serrano rematch has turned into a bid to become a two-time undisputed champion at two weights against a credible threat to her in Chantel Cameron.
Could have argued it's foolhardy for Katie Taylor to fight Chantel Cameron. She could have fought almost anybody in her big homecoming fight. Would have sold out.
She could have fought anybody. Why fight Chantel? That's a very difficult fight against a bigger, younger fighter who's wanted this for a long time. Chantel is hungry.
Why fight her?
It's because Katie Taylor is a competitor. It's because Katie Taylor don't shy away from tough fights. She never has. She probably never will. That could be to her detriment this weekend. I'd be lying to you if I told you.
It's not a foregone conclusion that Katie wins, even with home field advantage.
Scale of this fight. Size of the stage. What's on the line? This could inspire Chantel Cameron just as much as it could inspire Katie, the biggest fight of Chantel's career. Katie's had many big moments in her amateur and professional career, but for Chantel,
she's been waiting for a moment like this all her career.
This fight is brought to us in part by former UFC champion Conor McGregor, who said, "I'm incredibly proud and honored to support Ireland's own pound-for-pound GOAT, Katie Taylor. Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing have done a fantastic job putting together an unforgettable event, and Irish Forge Stout is ready to take over Fight Week."
Conor McGregor, in a bit of solidarity, saw that they were having some issues putting this thing together. Something to do with security costs.
Security detail for the fight. Just something along those lines. And he decided to chip in. He decided to
do something. Get involved.
And I feel like Conor McGregor's contribution to helping make this homecoming fight happen is more than we can say for some American-born fighters, some high-profile ones, who could have helped to bring a Clarissa Shields fight to America.
Yeah.
A big one.
It was at Clarissa Shields' request that a Savannah Marshall rematch happen on American soil instead of the UK. And I didn't see Floyd Mayweather or any American-based fighters.
I didn't see anybody volunteering to lend a helping hand to that show that Conor McGregor has lended to this one.
Now, Clarissa Shields is having a homecoming fight, but without the assisted aid of a Floyd Mayweather or just some high-profile American boxer, American Hall of Famer.
It's not a Marshall rematch, you understand. It was at Clarissa's request that if there is going to be a second fight, it has to happen in America.
It's not a Marshall rematch. It's a Gabriel's rematch.
And I'd be lying to you if I told you that the profile for this Gabriel's rematch is akin to the profile to Taylor versus Cameron. It really isn't.
And that's mostly because, as a professional, Clarissa Shields has boxed on American soil plenty of times, but as a professional, Katie hasn't boxed in Ireland.
As a professional boxer, this will be the first time, which adds to the event's prestige.
The fighting pride of Ireland is coming home.
Olympic gold medalist, undisputed two-division champion, her bid to become a two-time undisputed champion against a very formidable adversary. Chantel Cameron is several years younger than Katie Taylor, fully acclimated to super lightweight, unbeaten.
Bigger, younger, stronger.
That's right. Chantel Cameron is a harder puncher than Katie Taylor. Katie's very quick, light on her feet, plays at the angles, good combination puncher. But she's not a big puncher, at least not as big as Chantel.
Chantel wants to make a statement. Will she this weekend? Well, if she does.
Katie Taylor currently ranks in at number 1 on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. If she is victorious, if she is successful, and she does become a two-time, two-weight undisputed champion, she will retain that number 1 spot. But if she loses...
You guys know what the rules are.
No fighter on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list is allowed to maintain a rank until such a time as they return to the winner's bracket. Ranked alongside Katie Taylor is my favorite featherweight in the world, Amanda Serrano.
A 7-division champion who holds 2 Guinness World Records and has beaten 4 champions for 4 belts.
Amanda Serrano usurped Clarissa Shields for that number 2 spot once she beat Erica Cruz for the WBA title and became her division's undisputed champion, thereby tying the number of champions both her and Clarissa have beaten so far.
They've both beaten 4 apiece.
4 champions each. But the tiebreaker is that Amanda Serrano is a 7-division champion, whereas Clarissa has only been a champion at 3 weights.
4 less than Amanda.
You may be thinking to yourself, well, Katie's not a 7-division champion, so why is she ranked ahead of Amanda? And it's because she beat Amanda.
Perhaps by a narrow margin, but she did win the fight. That's the official outcome.
And that's what the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list reflects. If she falters this weekend and she loses to Chantel, Amanda advances to number 1 and Clarissa advances to number 2.
What about Chantel?
Chantel will advance to number 3 on the premise that beating Katie doesn't give Chantel the same body of work that Amanda Serrano has, the same body of work that Clarissa Shields has, high-profile victory that it might be. Beating Katie when she's moving up in weight doesn't give Chantel the exact same resume that they've got, so she will be in the top 5, but she won't be number 1.
No.
Katie Taylor will be off the list until such a time as she returns to the winner's bracket, because the list is only for winners and only for champions. We don't know if this is the start of a downward spiral. Should Katie Taylor lose, she's got to prove that she's still got it in the event that she does lose.
If she wins.
She keeps that number 1 rank and strengthens her argument to be the sport's number 1 pound-for-pound fighter. That's if she wins.
Can she win?
It's an uphill battle. I still think she has faster hands and faster feet than Chantel Cameron, but Chantel is bigger, younger, and stronger. And she's a body puncher. Going to the body can take a fighter's legs away.
If she takes Katie's legs away.
They won't be there to bail her out like they were in the McCaskill fight, the Lenardatu fight, or the Serrano fight.
Could be in trouble.
It's a 50-50 fight. A genuinely intriguing fight where there's no wrong answer leading up to it until the fight is over.
And done.
We'll talk more about the fight as this weekend approaches. Men's heavyweight news. You might have heard earlier today that Daniel Dubois has split from trainer Shane McGuigan. He's reportedly split from him, and the pair have been together since Dubois' loss to Joe Joyce a couple of fights ago.
Been with Shane McGuigan for approximately 4 fights. Word round the campfire is his sister, Carolyn Dubois, she stayed on board with Shane, but Daniel, he split from him.
It's a hell of a time to be in the market for a new trainer ahead of what is the biggest fight of Daniel Dubois' career, what's supposed to be the Alexander Usyk fight, a fight that is said to be in an impasse.
Negotiations are said to have stalled.
A less than opportune time to be in the market for a new trainer. Perhaps Daniel Dubois just doesn't feel he's growing under Shane McGuigan's watch. You saw how he looked in his last fight. He came very close to being stopped by a cruiserweight who moved up in weight.
Kevin Lorena.
More complicated matter is the split title status.
What?
Usyk versus Dubois is required to move forward in accordance with WBA's ongoing title reduction campaign. The sanctioning bodies have eliminated secondary titles in all but 5 remaining weight divisions. The strawweight title situation expected to be fully resolved in July. Usyk would have to show a genuine effort to honor his mandatory title defense to avoid being stripped, which would mean either a title defense or an agreement from Dubois' team to step aside for whatever permitted reason. Conversely, Dubois would be entitled to full and sole WBA heavyweight title status should Usyk fail to honor the current order.
It was Team Usyk, after the Fury fights collapsed, that went straight to the WBA and asked them to get working on the Dubois fight.
On the premise that they weren't going to be fighting Tyson Fury, and they knew that Daniel Dubois was next in the rotation.
They want to get him out the way.
But BoxingScene.com has learned that talks have all but ceased in the WBA ordered Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois title consolidation bout. The 30-day negotiation period assigned to the proposed bout ended May 2nd without a deal in place or hope of any progress. A purse bid is expected to be called in the coming days, and it has been called. It's set for later on this month on the 25th.
Next week.
It's not just that Team Usyk asked for this, and it's not just that Daniel Dubois is his mandatory challenger. It's not just that they ordered it. It's that this is part of an effort by way of the WBA to consolidate how many champions they have at a given weight to just one champion per weight. You will recall that not that long ago, the WBA could have had anywhere in between
3 to 4 guys calling themselves WBA champions. WBA interim, WBA gold,
regular, WBA super, under orders from the ABC Commission to narrow down the number of belts they have in circulation. The WBA decided they're going to consolidate all these belts to where they just got one champion per division. One WBA champion per weight class.
Under orders from the ABC Commission.
That's why they're doing this. They're under pressure from them. And now the WBA have scheduled Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois purse bids for Thursday, May 25th. You have to wonder if Daniel has any intention of going through with this fight at a time when he doesn't have a trainer. He's not with Shane McGuigan anymore. Given the time constraints, the deadline to make things happen, can he find a trainer on time?
Somebody to get him ready.
The fight is for Usyk's WBA, IBF, and WBO heavyweight world titles. A 75-25 split in Usyk's favor by way of the WBA. Do you see what happens when you leave Matchroom and you end up working with Queensberry?
Fury fight collapse.
It's looking a lot like the Daniel Dubois fight is about to collapse. I mean, it's all smooth sailing with Matchroom, and Alexander Krassyuk, in so many words, told Rob Tebbett of ID Boxing that he loves working with Matchroom because it's like a well-oiled machine or a watch or some kind of parallel like that.
Something.
They didn't stop working with Matchroom because they didn't want to. They stopped because they didn't have to. They were in the market for a Fury fight, and we all know Fury's promoted by Queensberry in the UK and Top Rank in the US, but
we know what happened. Things fell apart. Now things are falling apart with Daniel.
another Queensberry Promotions fighter. You're telling me Hall of Fame promoter Frank Warren couldn't get a goddamn deal done? Or is it that he could get a deal done, but because Daniel's between trainers...
Is that why negotiations have ceased?
I heard a rumor last week that Daniel's team had intentions of pulling him out of this fight, out of this purse bid. Could this be why? Initially, I thought if they're going to pull him out, it's likely because they want to put him in the ring with Fury instead of Usyk. Now I'm thinking this is the reason. This is why they might pull him out, because he ain't got no trainer.
This is what happens when you end up working with Queensberry instead of Matchroom.
I'm supposed to look at it as a coincidence that he tried to make a fight with one Queensberry fighter. That didn't work. Goes in to have another, and that doesn't work either.
Do you think that Frank Warren wants to give Alexander Usyk, who he doesn't have under contract, 75% of the pot, 75% of the pot for this fight, involving his fighter, who we all know?
You saw what he looked like in his last fight. In all likelihood, Usyk was going to beat him. And do you think that Frank Warren wants to give Usyk 75% of the pot to do that?
To beat his fighter?
I don't think so. I'm not saying that there was a clandestine effort to ruin this fight. I'm just saying that Frank Warren can breathe a sigh of relief that things are falling apart, because at minimum, I don't think he wanted to give Usyk 75% of the pot to pounce on his fighter. He don't have Usyk under contract.
Daniel's his horse in the race.
What happens now? If this fight falls apart, I'm not sure.
Nope.
Will Alexander Usyk have the autonomy, the liberty to move on to his next mandatory challenger?
WBA says before he's allowed to move on, he has to prove that he made an earnest effort to get Daniel in the ring. I don't really know what that entails. I don't know what that means. It's not Usyk having problems.
The next mandatory challenger in the rotation is supposed to be Zhilei Zhang by way of the WBO. He's supposed to be next, but he's spoken for. He's got to run it back with Joe Joyce because Joe activated his rematch clause, leaving Filip Hrgovic by way of the IBF. A Matchroom fighter.
He doesn't get to fight Hrgovic without approval from the WBA first.
Here's the kicker. According to Dan Rafael, the WBA told him that if Daniel Dubois is unable to compete, they will move on to the next highest-ranked contender. And the next highest-ranked contender is Deontay Wilder. It's a mess. It's a fucking mess. Because now what you have to ask yourself is, would Team Wilder gamble, the big show, the big card set to go down later on this year in Saudi, to take on Alexander Usyk next?
This was a conversation a couple of months ago. Wilder versus Usyk?
Vaguely recall the Wilder people saying they're open to that fight, and the Usyk people were open to it as well.
Here's the problem. Who's gonna pay for it?
Because somebody has to. At this point in the juncture, we really don't know what Deontay Wilder's network and promotional affiliations are. We don't know that he's still with the PBC. We don't know that...
Is he still with Showtime?
Does he have another engagement? Was he planning something all this time? Maybe an Andy Ruiz fight, now that Andy's not fighting Tyson Fury.
If Daniel Dubois, for whatever reason, is unable to compete, and the WBA holds Usyk's feet to the fire, and they order him to fight Wilder, what's Wilder gonna do?
I don't think the Usyk people are averse to fighting Deontay Wilder. It's a bigger fight with a bigger name than Daniel Dubois. They've expressed an interest in facing Wilder in the past, and Wilder himself and his team have expressed an interest in facing Usyk.
It's a title fight for 3 alphabet titles. To date, Deontay Wilder's never been a unified champion. He's never unified a title.
After having lost the green belt to Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder didn't go on to become a champion. He's not a 2-time heavyweight champion. This is his chance.
His big ticket. His big break.
Problem is, who's going to pay for this? Is the PBC going to bankroll it? Showtime? Is that who's supposed to pay for this fight?
Usyk is a network free agent.
He's not tied to any particular platform. When it comes to Wilder, the answers are not quite as clear. The story is that Usyk's in pretty tight with the Saudis, and Deontay Wilder's been spending some time there in reference what's supposed to be the big showdown later on this year, in December. Will the people over there in Saudi Arabia, will Prince Khaled decide to bankroll this fight?
So many questions that need answers because fighting Alexander Usyk ahead of schedule jeopardizes the Joshua fight. Wilder could lose this thing.
Remember, the plan is to do a big showdown later on this year in December that would feature both Usyk versus Fury and Wilder versus Joshua in December. If Deontay Wilder were to elect to take on Alexander Usyk, that jeopardizes the Joshua fight.
And when would a fight between Deontay Wilder and Alexander Usyk go down? Presumably sometime over the summer months.
I like the idea of Wilder versus Usyk over the summer, though I'm not completely convinced it happens. I'm not completely convinced it goes down because there's a lot of murky areas when it comes to Deontay Wilder right now. Ranked right behind Deontay Wilder is Martin Bakole, ranked in at number 2.
Hard-punching Martin Bakole, who was in action a few weeks ago on the undercard of Bobic versus Rozensky in Poland. He racked up another knockout.
If Daniel Dubois withdraws from this thing and Deontay's not available, that leaves Martin Bakole, who is promoted by Boxer on Sky Sports.
That's where I would imagine this fight takes place, because as stated, Usyk ain't tied to a network, but Martin Bakole is.
They'd have to bankroll this thing. In that scenario, they would. In a scenario where Daniel don't fight and neither does Wilder, the next man in line is Martin Bakole.
A couple of years ago, Martin Bakole got beat by Michael Hunter. Michael Hunter, who got beat by Alexander Usyk.
Now, Usyk could end up facing Martin Bakole in this alternative scenario. That's in the event that Daniel don't fight and Deontay Wilder is not available to either.
There's a lot of moving parts.
The heavyweight division has lost some steam the last couple of weeks. People aren't talking about it as much because everything is so immaterial. All these potential fights that may or may not happen, orders that are coming down.
People don't even know if they should be excited.
The idea that you could get Fury versus Usyk and Wilder versus Joshua all on the same night, same card, is an exciting proposition, but it's ambitious enough that people aren't sure if it happens, aren't sure if they can believe it, and this just adds to the skepticism.
It does.
I don't think Alexander Usyk wants to surrender any of his titles to these guys. I don't think he wants to have to relinquish the WBA title to Daniel Dubois or Deontay Wilder. So I feel like he's going to see this situation through. He's going to see it out.
In the event that he doesn't have the autonomy to satisfy one of his other mandatory challengers in Filip Hrgovic.
It was all supposed to be so simple. You're not fighting Fury, so take care of Daniel.
Now, we don't know if Daniel's gonna fight.
Would have been all right. He could just move on to Hrgovic since Zhilei Zhang is spoken for. He's running it back with Joe.
Now, he might have to fight Wilder, and if he can't fight Wilder, he might have to fight Martin Bakole. It's all very confusing.
How many weeks and how many months are going to pass by before an official fight is announced? A fight with Daniel, a fight with Wilder, a fight with somebody.
How many?